raster graphics. So I had you watch like many videos about how screens work. It's a little different from what we're doing in this class, right? Like it's not exactly code. It was like learning about hardware and how our hardware works. But the thing is that every single image that we see on our screen, and all we see on our screen are images. So the zoom interface is an image. It's an image of a rectangle with text in it, with icons. It has a bar that I can click on the bar and drag it around. I can minimize it. I can like, oh, pop it away. Then I can bring it back. This is a picture I'm working on for my friends in Photoshop. And this picture is a JPEG image, so that's relevant to your homework. But even the interface that the picture is in is also an image. So everything, the screen is kind of like this sieve that everything goes through, whether it's written in code, whether it's text, whether it's a vector image, which we'll go over on Monday, or a pixel-based image. So this is a pixel-based image. If we zoom in here, we can see all the pixels on her face. But even if it's your computer interface, so like here is my Firefox window, there's like a video embedded in here that I could play. So we have moving images. There's the links up here, like all of that collapses no matter how it's produced and goes through this like sieve, if you will, of the screen. And the computer has its own programming, its own code that's running inside of it that takes all of that information and transforms it into pixels and then displays it on our screen. And our screen is a grid of a certain size. And in my computer, I think I have 1,440 pixels wide by like 900 something pixels tall. I think that's the screen resolution. And that will vary on your phone and on different computers. Some computers, like we saw in the video, where the man talks about OLEDs and ALED displays and all these things, retina displays, they have varying amounts of density. So because the iPhone has a retina display, even though it's very small, it might have more pixels on it than your computer if you have like an older non-Apple computer, for example. The computer might have less pixels available than the phone, even though the screen of the computer might be 3 times bigger than the screen of the phone. So like ultimately everything is represented in pixels. So that's why I wanted you to watch those videos and kind of wrap your mind around that. Because even our text, which is made with vector graphics, even our SVGs, even, you know, when we run the terminal, come on, wake up terminal. Even this, which is a text-based interface, is ultimately represented in pixels. And so the way that we think about the relationships of these pixels to each other matters. These decisions matter. The first kind of media that we're going to deal with will be pixel-based media. Makes the most sense to start from there. And I had a website which is lost now. Let's see. Here it is. So the website that we're going to work in is called photopea.com. And it's a very nice web-based image application, pixel pushing application. People who work in Photoshop and do photo retouching call themselves pixel pushers sometimes, because that's like all day you just push pixels around. That's your job. So this one is really great. It's modeled on Photoshop, which is what we used to teach in this class before. So this is Photoshop, but we now don't have a license to give out to you guys while you're away remotely. So we're going to use this, but this is actually like, you can look at it, they're like the same. I don't see any differences yet. So this is really great because it's free and it does all the same things and it's online. Okay, so we're going to go to photopea.com and you can see that they have in their new project, when you click on create a new project, it gives you some options with like presets, so partially finished projects. And then you can also just pick a size. And so I was talking about my screen resolution before. Here we can see on social media, for example, certain parts of the web page have a certain resolution already. So I like this YouTube cover one because we have a YouTube channel, so I'd like to make a cover for it. So I'm gonna click this. And if you look at it, you can see it says 2.5, and I can't zoom in, but it says that the resolution is 2560 pixels by 1440 pixels. So that's the standard image size that YouTube uses for all of its headers. Now this might scale to me differently. So you've all scaled your images on your websites before. As a web designer, you can set the scale at which it will render, but their highest, most comfortable resolution that they would like to have for like the largest display that people use it at is 2560 pixels wide by 1440 across, which also happens to be the same resolution as a 2K video. So I don't know if you've heard of video formats like we talk about HD and 2K and 4K. 4K is like the most recent thing. Televisions are coming in at 4K. So I don't know how many pixels across exactly 4K is, but 2560 is 2K. So we can kind of guess that 4K is like maybe closer to 5000 pixels. So it'll be twice this. Okay, so we're gonna have a name. I'm gonna call it web dev cover. And here it asks me a question of DPI. So DPI is the density of points per inch. And in this case, it's saying dots per inch. So how many dots do I have per inch? So when we have a printer, there's different kinds of density at which the printer will like fill in the page with little droplets of ink. Technology, the physics of printing is such that it's more dense. And usually like 140 DPI is a good print resolution. A minimal print resolution. A good print resolution is like 280. And like many things, our vision is logarithmic. So when we see something go from like 72 to 140, we see like a one-step increase, even though it's a double density increase, which we'll get into later. But resolutions kind of tend to like go up exponentially. Sound also, when we start editing sound, volume behaves in a similar way. So we have our 72 DPI, and 72 DPI is the DPI of most screens. So that's why it's set to that. Retina display, however, is 96 DPI. But we'll stick with 72. Okay, so now we have a page. This is our one layer, and then we're going to eventually make more layers. Okay, so let's see what the homework says. So the homework says to like take a selfie basically and edit yourself into another environment. Okay, a picture of myself. So I happen to have a picture of myself in here, as a matter of fact. That's a picture of me. So I wonder if I can import that picture into here somehow. Let's see. I can take a picture. Great, I can open the picture too. So I keep some images in here. Black and white, great. Here it is. Okay, so this image just opened in another file, but we want them to be in the same file. So I hit Command A to select all and Command C, and you can see there's these little marching dots, this little dashed line, which hopefully means that it has selected everything. Yes, I hit Command V, and now there is a image of me on the background, and I can move it around. So I hit this cursor, and I can drag it on the background. Great. And I haven't used this software before, actually, but because it looks so much like Photoshop, I can reasonably guess how it's going to behave. That the cursor will act the same way as the cursor in Photoshop acts, that the select tools will act the same way. It looked like it had like a magic wand. I don't see it anymore. Okay, we shall see. All right, so now we want to find a fantastic background. So let's see if we can open from URL. Okay, great. So I'm going to go to, oh, I'm in Firefox. I'm going to open another page, and I want a background of like an oil rig in the ocean. That's definitely a place I have never been to in my life before ever, is on an oil rig. This one looks nice. Okay, so now we can avail ourselves of this really great view file feature, which is in DuckDuckGo, because when I look at this, this is actually the file, right? It's ended in .png, which means that it's an image file. It's not an HTML file or CSS file or a JavaScript file. So I can copy this, and then I can go back to my Photopea and paste this in here. And I want to open it in the current project. Say okay, it's loading. Huzzah! I have an oil rig. The oil rig is a little smaller than my image for the YouTube channel is 2,560 pixels wide, right? And if we go back here, we can see it says 1920 by 1080. So 1920 by 1080 happens to be HD, or we never use this term, but 1K, because it starts with 1 here. A little deceiving, because this is almost 2, right? Across, but so it's the previous most popular video resolution. So that means that we're going to have to upres the image. So I'm just going to drag this, and you can see that when I drag it in one direction, like now I'm distorting the image. I'm not just upresing it, I'm distorting it, which I don't want to do so much. So I'm gonna hit Shift, and when I hold down Shift and drag, then it keeps the proportion consistent. And again, this behavior I didn't even check before teaching this class. This is just how most applications treat resizing. When you hold Shift, things stay locked in place, and when you don't, they don't. So I just assumed, which is a little dangerous, but I just assumed that it was going to work fine when I taught this, and it's true, it worked fine. Okay, so now we have upresed our image. And if I can find the zoom, oh no, that's search. That's funny. So we use the same icon for zoom and search. The only difference is their location. That's kind of a funny interface design choice. Okay, so I want to zoom in here just to like have a closer look at the pixels. So you can see that when it upresed and when I hit option, it becomes negative, which is also very typical behavior of tools. You can see that when it upresed, it like, you know, it had to fill in some gaps. So this isn't a super smooth line anymore. Now you can actually see the steps in the line, which in reality in the photograph, if you went to look at a crane, there wouldn't be any steps on it like this. But here we have steps. But that's okay. Because for the most part, no one's going to be looking at it at that size. Okay, so we have this great background, but the image of me that I was supposed to Photoshop or edit in here, photo edit in here is invisible now, and that's because of the layer stack. So just like in when we do our coding, the things that happen at the end are interpreted last. So they render, there's a rendering order, like this is closer to the object we're affecting, so it's going to override, like even though the default background, the default text color of everything is black, because this is like right on the text, we see the text in red. So very similar concept here, but instead of like lines of text and code, we have our levels of imagery. So what we have to do is just drag the layer of the one image under the other image, and now we have them properly there. Okay, so oops, nope, I don't want to be dragging that one. Select this one. So now I want to like drag my face so that it's like, maybe I'm gonna be emerging out of the ocean in front of the oil rig. How about that? Okay, but we have this background, pesky background that's in the way. This is going to take a while. I would love it if there was a way to select just based on color alone. There's magnetic lasso. So magnetic lasso is something that exists in Photoshop as well. And it has basically what's called seam detection on it. So it's a lasso that you can drag next to the edges of an element. And it kind of like looks for the line where the pixels change color radically, where the seam is in the image. So this is looking for the line between the white and the black background of my shirt. Okay, so that'll do. That's helpful enough that I can go around this pretty quickly. Okay, so we have a selection, but we just selected me and not the background. So if I hit delete now, that deletes the thing I don't want to delete. So I hit Command Z to undo. That's great. How do we inverse our selection? So there's a select menu and it says inverse. Great. That's what I want. So we've inversed our selection. So now the selection's acting on everything outside of what we selected. And here we are. Fantastic. Okay, so the edge could be a little better. I'm actually going to hit Command Z again, and if I can, feather this a little. So that makes a nice smooth kind of gradient between the selection and me. Oh no, I don't want to leave. Okay. Wait. Delete? Okay, there we go. All right, maybe that looks a little better. Hard to say. Okay, and then something else I want to do is I want to um, refine this edge at the bottom so that it looks like I'm coming out of the ocean. So one thing I would do here is I can close the eye so the image of me is not in the way, and then I can click on the oil rig and I can select that. I can select the ocean. So let's just check where I am. Okay, so it's from the middle of the oil rig to the end of the ocean on my screen, basically. So cool, I'm gonna take the magnetic lasso and select this horizon line. This is gonna be tricky because it's going to want to go up the top, yeah. So I'm just gonna have to make very small increments here so that it's not tempted to climb up or to the side. Okay, and then this doesn't matter since we're only deleting a very small part. All right, so we have a nicely selected spot over here. And now if we turn the eye, oops, I missed the spot. Okay, we'll do it in two goes. If we open the eye up on this level now, we can see that it's like cutting off my chest area so that the water can be on top of it. And then if we just go click on the layer where I am instead of the ocean and hit delete, it now deletes that layer instead of deleting the ocean one in which we made the selection. There's far too much feathering over here. Hello, delete. Okay, there we go. Great, and then we'll just do it again. You can still see me, but I'm making assumptions about where the water's edge is. And we'll go in here and hit delete. That's pretty funny. The feathering's a little much for me, so I'm just going to move, and I'm hitting my arrow down key. I'm just gonna move myself down a little bit so it looks a little better. So this edge could be refined as well, but I'm not going to go into refining it now so that we could just move on with like learning what we need to learn. But think about how you would refine your edge when you're doing the same exercise. So maybe you would select it with the magnetic lasso and then like put a nice feather on it or something. So the next thing that it asks for, oh, look at that. It's still a little small. I wonder if I can, so when I held shift, I selected both layers. And if I want to make them bigger, I can move them. Okay, I guess I don't need to make them bigger. I just need to move them. Cool. Okay, so finally, it asks you to make a text layer. So we can add another layer. And then there's a text icon over here. And I'll just write and it's very small. I want it much bigger. Okay. And the program automatically generated a text layer for me, so I guess I can delete this layer that I made in anticipation of having text. Okay, let's see what else. Okay, and then we're just going to save our work. So what this has here is it has a PNG download option. PNG is a really great file format. It's like my favorite file format because it's relatively lightweight. It doesn't take up a lot of space, but it's also uncompressed. So when you look at JPEGs, every single time we open and close a JPEG, as you learned about compression, the way in which these pixels get reorganized and resaved is affected. And you can even see there's like a slight grid. Maybe you can see there's a slight grid on these pixels of lighter and darker pixels. Despite the fact that this is an image of a woman's hair, there's like this overlaid grid, and that's the effect of the compression starting to show through. And every time you open and close a JPEG, it adds to that compression, which we don't like, especially now that we have lots of space on our computers. You know, JPEG files are usually very small. We don't need to worry about compressing them so that they're even smaller when they're in storage. So PNG is great because it's uncompressed. And there we go. It says layer 1 because I guess I'm in layer 1. I wonder if I can like... So the fact that it's changing its name based on the layer I selected is making me wonder if it's just going to save that layer, but let's see. And I'll say open with preview. Yes, it only saved the layer that I selected. So let's see if selecting all of them will give me a full PNG. Yes, okay. So when you're using this app, keep in mind that you want to select all of the layers when you export. So that's the PNG, which is great. You can now use it as a regular image in your website. So I can say image src equals, what was the name of this? Background dot png, save. And I do have to put it in the right place, so I think it just went to downloads, probably. Yep, there it is. So let me put it to desktop. This is like a horrific picture, by the way, it's ridiculous. Okay, here it is. It's all in the same folder so that I can use my relative URL. And notice that background has a capital B at the beginning of it, so I'm using capital B. And now if we put this in Firefox, holy smokes, right? It's 2,500 pixels wide by 1,400 pixels wide. That's right, that's a thing that we need to do. So let's also add a width equals, and I'm gonna say 1440. And then that should mean that the height is half of 1440, so that's 720. Okay. And if we reload, it's still really big. It's still twice as big as my desktop. Oh, maybe that's because I hit plus a whole bunch of times. Yes. Okay. So now it's about the same size as my desktop. Oh, hey, the colors match. Perfect. Okay. So we've got an image worked in here. For your assignment, it says that you should also send in the PSD, but I'm actually okay with if you just screenshot your photo P, but make sure you screenshot it and that the screenshot has all the contents it needs to have instead of, before closing it, because otherwise I can't give you credit for it. But if you just screenshot this situation where I can see your text layers, that's fine. Like, I don't need to open your PSD. I know I can see that there's text, and then if I see the screenshot, I'll know that there was a layer that made that text. So, and that will be a lot easier in terms of like dealing with multiple documents and exporting stuff. So that's fine if you want to do that. Otherwise, you can save as PSD, and you can also export as different formats. But if you hit save, you can download this to your computer, or you can even open it with Photoshop if you have it. Yes, it's unhappy. So when I've opened this, I can see my layers, and I can like operate on them the same way that I would have if I was in Photoshop. So you can move between the two, which is really amazing. So Photoshop is now a program that needs to be licensed, and I think just for Photoshop you have to pay $10 a month, which is like $10 is not expensive, but if you multiply that by 12, it's $120 per year. So every year you would have to pay that, and I'm sure the price would only go up just to have photo editing software on your computer. That's kind of ridiculous. So I'm really glad that websites like this exist. And I would happily pay for this software even. I just don't think that it should be the kind of thing that you pay for every month, because you don't even know if you're going to use it that month, right? So it's kind of this paradigm of subscription software that Adobe is falling into. Is a lot of people don't like it, and I think rightfully so. And so maybe it's falling out of favor. Maybe that's also one of the reasons that we're not like including that in our class anymore. This is a better way to go for now. Of course, if you become a professional photo editor or professional videographer and you use applications like Preview, or like for graphic design, you might use Illustrator. It makes sense to pay for something every month because you use it every month for your work. And in that case, like, sure, yeah. But making everybody pay every month, like even students or like hobbyists, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm really glad that we can use this web-based software, and I'm super impressed that it's available for free, because this is a lot of work. Like, we're struggling now to make our websites, even though they're fairly simple. We know how much work goes into coding something, and the fact that like whoever made this got together and put out this entire application and then embedded it into a browser is like super, super impressive to me. So yeah, we use this Photopea. And finally, another part of your assignment is to embed. So speaking of embedding applications into a browser, I want you to embed a video or audio into your page as well. And I'll show you the example from Instagram. It's very simple. So this is my own Instagram account. I just went to it, my own profile rather. I went to it on the web, and in the corner there's these three dots, and there's this embed. It's great. And I can copy this embed code, so I'm gonna hit Command C and go into our page that we just made. This is messy as hell, but okay, whatever. Save. And then if we look at it in Firefox, we have a video. Okay, so this is not rendering well. I don't like that it's redirecting me to another place. I want it to show the video in here, but we tried. I see this a lot on Instagram embeds, so like they just don't come through sometimes. So let's see what else we can embed. For example, a YouTube video. So you can find that like most things have an embed code that you can use. This guy's really great. He does like props and like small machined projects, 1-day projects. Okay, so here we also have this 3 dots, but we also have this share. So the share button is probably going to take me where I want. And I see embed. Fantastic. I can copy this. And what would make even more sense is if I actually just put our own web design videos on this page. So maybe that's what I'll do. And now if I drag and drop into here, oh, look at that. Adam Savage is on my website. And I have a video. Amazing. And it looks like it's a seamless transition. The video butts right up against my image. So you can start to think about how you might build a website with different kind of media on it. Finally, we can look for sounds, for example, on SoundCloud. And let's say there's a song. I like this song a lot. How can maybe I can embed it. So there's this little share thing. Doesn't look like, oops. Oh, there we go. There's the big word up here, embed. Great. So I can copy this. So this is a little bit of using the codes that the internet gives you. And you can see it's this iframe tag, the special tag that is used for embedding. So I'm going to save that, and if we look at it, oh great, now I have like a cool alien track. Awesome. And this kind of brings up an interesting and like inherent aspect of the internet, and that is if you can embed something and if you can set its size, you can also, like here it says width and height. I'm like, well, what if I make the width and height 0? What happens if I do that? It's gone. But it's not actually gone, right? Like it's still here. It has this autoplay. So maybe I can say autoplay YouTube embed code. So I looked this up, and it's not possible to do this anymore by setting autoplay and making your iframe be 0 size is not possible anymore because browsers protect against this. Rightfully so. This would be an abuse of embed codes. You can have somebody go to your website and listen to your horrible music and subject them to it, and they wouldn't be able to find the button of where to turn it off, and like that's torturous. And I'm sure many of us have experienced that kind of thing. So browsers do not let that go through anymore. Even if you set the autoplay tag to 1, it will not play unless the user specifically clicks on the play button. But we can imagine how, okay, this is just very simple HTML that we're using, HTML and CSS, and there's a protection against that, but there are web technologies out there that we haven't even thought about yet. So we haven't gone into JavaScript or other web languages. And rest assured, there are ways to do this kind of messing around with people's website experiences with hidden elements. There's a really interesting video you can look up on the Facebook pixels. It's a single pixel that moves around and does things. Okay, bear with me because the point I'm getting at is if you can autoplay something, for example, but not see it, you'll have the sound playing on the website, but you don't see the element that's there. And it's an element that's actually from another website. So that kind of shows you how tracking and how tracking is achieved of users and how our behavior can be watched and cataloged on the internet. So in this case, we're not recording any information. We're not watching the website, we're just playing a video. So in this case, it would be an annoying kind of like situation where you open up a web page and then it's like bah, 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 and you can't turn it off, which is like super irritating indeed. But it's not doing anything to us. But you can imagine a situation where it's not making sounds, but instead it is like recording our movements or whatever.